Oh, gotta hide my view over here. So there we go. Hey everybody, welcome to Work in Progress, the show from Arena Collective about work life and everything in between. My name is Colin.
And I am Rachel. Yay! We are doing the show again, and this is number 29.
We're almost to 30. We've been doing it for more than half a year, which is
Yes.
a lot longer than our audio-only podcast lasted. So,
Yep. Audio only. I like that. Yes. Yeah. And then next week, I'm jumping the gun, obviously, but next week is our 30th, and we have a clever name for it. It's called Pearls of Wisdom. And that is simply because 30th anniversary is traditionally pearls, so hence pearls of wisdom. Everything we've learned ever our entire lives.
you gotta go through like the wood anniversary, the paper.
Yes. Yeah,
pearl.
we already did all those. That was a while back. This seemed like a good round number.
So what are the three things that we're talking about today?
All right, so this week we are doing ebooks, overrated, underrated. We're talking about Patreon and other creative platforms that artists of all types can launch on. So musicians, writers, etc., not just physical artists like paint and such. And then also ramen, because ramen, well, I have an opinion, but ramen, underrated or overrated. So that's our show today.
Perfect. So let's we'll save ramen for the last one. And the first one is ebooks, underrated, overrated.
I'm the middle. I really like ebooks in that they're cheaper and they're a lot easier to buy because you just press click and you own it. But as a person who's reminded by things, I find them difficult because I don't see, reminded by physical things, I should say. I don't see the books waiting for me to read. And so they're there, but they're just all hidden on a little device that if I don't remember, I can ignore that they're there. So yeah, it's kind of a mixture for me.
Yeah, I kind of agree there. I mean, I don't use them very often. I actually do paper books more, but the books that I have done on ebooks, I like the highlighting feature just because I've actually gone back to go look at like just the highlights and just the notes from some of the books that I've read, and it's pretty cool to go back to because you could do that if you like highlighted a regular book, but it's a lot harder to see like all of those things all in one place.
Yeah. See, and for me, so right now, like, I don't know if we've even talked about this, but I'm also in school right now. And for me, being able to highlight the page on the physical page and then flip back and forth, but I know that there's a highlight feature.
Right. I don't know if I would have used it well in like a school context. It's more of like, I guess for any book really, but like not something I'm going to refer back to often for like homework or an essay, but more for like, oh, I haven't read that book in a few years. Let's go back and see like, what did I highlight when I did read it? And maybe it like makes me want to read it again, or I can read through the notes and be like, okay, I think I got my fill of that again.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have an affinity for the physical. Like I have books that I've owned for years and that I've reread, and I love bookstores. I love old books. I love like when people have those rows of books and those when they're selling like used books or older books and they have them in those they look like flower beds almost, where all the spines are faced out. And I love like pouring through those. But yeah, I guess it's sort of a romanticized vision of books, because how many of those did I actually read? Well, I own them.
Right.
So
well, and it's tricky. I was listening to David Chang's show yesterday, and he used to really go into buying cookbooks. So this is a very different kind of book. And was really a collector of cookbooks, but like, he like infamously does not follow recipes. He mostly uses it to reference the ingredients. Like if you just want to kind of know, like he'll be like, I need to know what's in it, but I'm going to take my own riff on it or whatever. But and I guess that this kind of leads into the ramen conversation too.
Yeah,
but
it totally does.
He lost most of his cookbooks during Hurricane Sandy, so there is also that element of it, which is like, how many times have you moved and the books end up being the heaviest thing, or something that you can lose, destroy, something can happen to it. This is probably one of the things that I think most people struggle with when, like, not necessarily going minimalist, but just decluttering. Like,
oh yeah,
if you're attached to books, you know, they take up a lot of space. You know, I've got these here, you know, and we talked about the jokes of the Lamborghini and all these books that are behind me.
Yep. You're like, I've got my bike and my books.
Knowledge, yeah.
All the knowledge.
And I've been trying to read books that I guess don't, like, I've read a lot of like the Atomic Habits type books that we talk about on the show, but I'm trying to read, like, I think the only fiction book that I've read this year was Dune. Right. And I just started this book that I have had. It's actually went from this shelf to the collective's shelf and back to my shelf, and I'm finally like trying to force myself to read it. And it's it's called Musashi, and it's a novel about a swordsman, a Japanese swordsman. So it is extremely, like, it is a thick book, and the words on this page are so small. It's making me feel very old, and like I need like a magnifying glass to read this thing. So I'm gonna try to get through the first book. It's divided up into 7 books, so we'll see. If it doesn't grip me by then I'll probably just give it up. But it's like one of the best selling books in Japan, or I guess it was. So I forgot where I came across it, why I bought it, but something made me buy it. So
interesting.
We can talk about that in the future if I actually get through it. But
yes, the Swordsman book. And I would also like to highlight that thank you for making our weekly reference to James Clear and Atomic Habits. Call out.
I think this show is now the only time I talk about Atomic Habits. I don't talk about it any other time. Never.
A couple times a year, Codivation, but other than that, yeah.
So
we just live it. That's why.
I think ebooks are probably top of mind because we are coming out with a Arena Collective digital library. So that I'm excited about because it lets us, very similarly to it's the same software that the Washoe County uses.
A lot of libraries.
We basically have our own version of it, so we can select which books we want. Members can request certain books. That means that then we, as the collective, are paying for those books, but instead of them sitting on a shelf, like we have a bookshelf just like this at the office, and most of those books just collect dust. So thankfully that allows us to have a few staples, right? Books that we know we always want, but then if there's a book that you want to see, you can request it, and you can check it out just like you can. It shows up in your Kindle or whatever apps that you're using, and then it disappears, I guess, once the rental is over, and you can check that again. But we did that because, you know, yes, you could rent some of these things from Washoe, but some of the books on their site have, even for the ebooks, have like a 30+ week wait list.
Yeah.
And so we can buy our own rights to certain books. We can even, if we really want to, I think we didn't do it for the first book club, but if there's a book club that we all get behind, we can actually, for some books, not all publishers offer this, but we can say, like, we're going to get 30 copies of this book for 1 month. And then everyone in the club gets that. So that's going to be kind of fun to play with. And that mostly came out of us trying to figure out, like, something that would be useful when we return to the office, but also useful now in the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. And a nice way. It's a different sort of way to do have a social connection with everyone versus a online Zoom happy hour type thing, which has its place, but might be getting a little old.
Well, and having a common ground, I think, helps. And the book definitely helps with that. I don't know if it's going to be the next immediate book club, but we can't talk about who it is yet. We're still we're waiting. There's a waiting game. But we're going to hopefully announce that pretty soon here. So we'll be talking to them very shortly. They're working on another book, and so we need to hopefully have an author help us. So.
Yes, an author, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, can we say it's an author? Which would be really kind of neat, because being able to ask an author direct questions or if we're able to, doing a Q&A live. Yeah, so
well, it's different than those like English lit type, what do you think the author was trying to say here? We can just ask.
Right. What exactly was Austin trying to do versus, exactly. Hey, so what's the deal?
So I guess we'll just keep going on the topic of authors. So Patreon and I guess the creator economy as a whole. So underrated, overrated. We're going to do this for all three of these. So
what do you think?
I think it's highly underrated. I think it's very new. I think we'd agree, all of us believe that we should be paid for our work, but I think it's not always been easy to get paid for your work. Especially in the creative world where, something, or I guess even when it's upended, right? When musicians don't have music halls to perform in, how does that look? How do you get supported? How do you create your work? You're not having art galleries as an artist. If you're a writer, do you go that typical route of writing a book that might make money, which is not always a given that it's going to make you any money? There's a lot of issues with I guess the way that the creator economy has always worked, and so there's a lot of really cool tools out now. So I think it's underrated.
Yeah, I would have to agree, because I think Etsy was a real big one with physical art. So I'm not familiar, and maybe I might be wrong, but I'm not aware of any musicians selling on Etsy. But the idea of being able to sell your art to a larger group of people. And a lot of it, a lot of Etsy in the beginning had birds on it. The whole bird culture thing.
There's a lot of yarn. There's a lot of
and creative. Yeah. And then stemming off of that have been more of the smaller, like specific handmade or specific, and you see Amazon repeating that with products. But it's also interesting, like you said, with music. Patreon was the one that we mentioned, but of course there's a whole lot more than some of the ones a couple of the ones you listed I'm not even familiar with, but Patreon allows a little bit more interaction. So like a course, without needing to do a platform that's specific to courses, I suppose. I've never used it on the user end, but I have a couple of people that I patron. Because you're not following them,
so you're on the backer side of things.
Yes, I'm the backer for a couple people, or one of the backers. Pay their paychecks. It's a nice feeling to feel like you're contributing to someone that you believe in. I think for some people there might be, you can always end it, I guess. I mean, I don't think it's a set. You just pay each month until you don't want to, and then you cancel. But you can get, whether it's products or like access. A one-on or access. Thank you. That is exclusive, and it might be having a conversation, or it might be a Zoom call that has you and a few other people. It might be something that they create that they do sell. They might give you for free, or with music. Getting to hear a live concert over Zoom, not necessarily in person, but with that, with the artists themselves. And, as people get bigger and bigger, I would assume that they start to kind of fall off of these platforms, these DIY type platforms. I suppose, because let's see, if we run through some of the ones you mentioned, like
some of them do move on to their own platform, right? Because I think this is good for people to learn. You don't have to go invest in software. You just sign up for Patreon, you create your levels. It doesn't always have to be monthly. So like one of them that I follow is a friend, Palace Pixels, which I'll post in chat. And so she has an Etsy store, but then she also has a sticker club and a pin club now. And what's cool is that you can have like goals. So like the sticker club is $7 for every creation. So if she only makes something every quarter, then you only pay every quarter. If she pops something out every month, which she's been doing lately, then it's every month. And so you can kind of set those tiers up. But then she had a goal, I think it was like once she gets to $700 a month, that she would do a pin club. So she's a designer. She makes a lot of things in the D&D and kind of geek space. And so now she's doing a pin club with all of her backers. And so you can create all these different like incentives and rewards. And I think today she just posted like a behind the scenes of, she's been doing time lapses of her actually designing the designs and sharing them with her backers. So,
See, and that's the kind of exclusive content that I would love to see.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also just curated, right? So it's like maybe she did it and posted it on Twitter, but if you weren't paying attention closely, you may never see it, right? Yeah. So some of these platforms, like a Patreon, will send out the email update to backers. Substack is for creating your own newsletters, and so those can be free or paid. And I know locally, Alicia Barber has a really popular Substack now. I believe that one's free, but you can actually monetize it. And so what's really interesting is like some really big journalists have started Substacks, and some of them, Ben Thompson, I believe. I mean, he's bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars in a newsletter. Like it's amazing.
Wow.
And so he has an audience that if he ever, I think he already is independent, but there are people. The argument is like New York Times is actually not allowing reporters to create these types of paid newsletters without permission now, because is it a New York Times audience or is it the reporter's audience? And I think this is a really big thing in the creator economy. It's like, should you as the creator be able to take your audience with you? Who owns it? And this is where Facebook and some of these other tools, Facebook makes you pay ads to talk to your own community, because otherwise they won't show you stuff. They won't show stuff to your community. So there's a lot of benefits to some of these, like a Patreon, a Substack, Coffee, even Twitch and YouTube. To some extent, you can subscribe to individual creators. And I think YouTube ad money goes to, like, we have All Terrain Family at the Collective and some other YouTubers. They get ad money, but if you subscribe directly to them, they're going to get a bigger portion of that, and YouTube will take a cut of, as they always do. But you can vote with your money, which I think is really good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and one of the other people I want to mention who's one of the members here at the Reno Collective, but is a Patreon user, and she just hit a nice big goal that she was waiting for, and that's Ashley. And so Ashley has Scribe Mind, and it's a storytelling collective. So she talks about various things like using programs, creating worksheets for specific programs. So you get that kind of content as well as a podcast or a Q&A. And yeah, it's just a nice way of like being able to connect with that artist on, I feel, the people at least I'm backing on a more personal level, rather than you're just one of millions. And I'm sure there's Patreon and YouTube, all of those types of accounts that have millions of people on them. So you got a little lost in the crowd.
Yeah, there was an app that a friend of mine, it's actually an app that has been around, it was around 10 years ago and it disappeared. It was, I can't remember the story about like the business or how it was funded or anything, but it's actually back again, and it's a way for you to collaboratively, socially, like listen to music. And you actually have little avatars, and they get on stage and DJ. And so like you go put your avatar up on stage and you play a song from Spotify or YouTube or wherever, and then people are like thumbs up, thumbs down, and you get points and things like that. And that is back, and it's being run by a very, very small team, and we're just trying to figure out like how do we make sure it stays around? How do you give them money? And they have a Patreon. So that is, it's a quick way where that team is busy trying to just bring this app back to life. They don't have time to go like build payments and figure out like how to send someone a t-shirt. They can do all of that in Patreon, which is really powerful. So I just subscribe to that, mostly just because I'm rooting for them. I just want to see, it's kind of internet nostalgia. This thing is back, and maybe it'll be something that we can play around with on a Friday for the collective and just create a collective room or something. But, it's basically a social ambient listening room where you don't have to have your camera on, you can't talk, but there is chat and there's music. And so, it can be everything from an app to, anyone just kind of starting out as a business that could use Patreon for that.
Right. So now, what would be the difference with Kickstarter, you're having to set up those goals, and then you're also having to meet a deliverable. Yeah,
Kickstarter is very, very different. I actually like this more than a Kickstarter, because the issue with Kickstarter is it's a treadmill. You have to, once it's funded, you need to now go put your head in the sand and get the work done. If you don't, a lot of people are upset. I think the Patreon model of like you pay every creation is kind of nice, because you could back someone, I've seen it before, $5, $10, $20 a month, which is I'll say these do add up. I think that's one of the things to
Yeah.
consider, because I'm backing a few Twitch people, I'm backing a couple Patreons, and suddenly you're like, how do I? This is like a cable bill now. But
Yeah.
you know, if you're not paying, it depends on where your money's going, right? You get to choose, so you can, like you said, pause one, start another one. If you're a Patreon creator and you're seeing a lot of people supporting you, I think a lot of Patreon creators are really big supporters of other Patreons. So it's kind of sharing the love there, and yeah, it's exciting to see. I think it's good. I don't even know how to classify these types of. I mean, they're creators, they're artists, right? But they're not freelancers. They're independent creators.
No, right. And I think, for a lot of people, I think there's probably people who are making their paychecks on it, and then people who have it as, more of a
side hustle,
creative side hustle.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it just has a lot of potential, and it seemed like for the rest, I'm not entirely sure what all the amounts are for each of them, and I'm sure some are better than others, but what you end up paying, whether it's like a commission or an advertising fee, etc., that you as the artist yourself, the creator yourself, end up paying for them. So yeah,
I would say Patreon has also come under a lot of heat over the years too. Like they jacked up the percentage, and a lot of people I think people they like to be in like Patreon's corner until Patreon's like, we're gonna take more money from creators to hit certain goals that we need to hit, and then all of a sudden you realize that, like, I'm not married. I can take my audience and go somewhere else. And some of these people, I think, like Sam Harris is one where they built them and they paid a lot of money to build their own system for this because they were too big for Patreon. They were, and Patreon was taking a large amount of money, and I think it was mostly around like his podcast, Sam Harris's podcast, and his meditations and things like that. So, and things like Calm.com have proved that people want to spend money to sleep better and improve their lives and things like that. So yeah,
especially now. Okay. Well, that's awesome. I like that one. Well, then next we have a delicious one, ramen. So, overrated or underrated? I personally think it's underrated just because I like it a lot. But I'm not very, what would be the word? When you're like not brave, but willing to try a whole bunch of things. I've only tried a few different sort of types of ramen, and I never feel like when I've attempted to make it that it looks as beautiful as it does other places.
Yeah.
It just looks bland when I make it.
So you're saying underrated. Yeah, I would say, I mean, that's a big part of it, is that flavor in ramens, ramens originating from Japan, but like even a pho from Vietnamese culture.
Like from
it takes a really long time to make the stock, and usually you can't just throw it on the pot for dinner in 5 minutes, right? Obviously, most of us, we know instant ramen and things like that. Which it's very timely that we're talking about this because Momofuku just announced a instant ramen. So this is another plug for David Chang and his food empire. So I mean, he's been really innovating and like taking all the things that they did in their restaurants and turning them into products. So you see things like chili crunch oil and his shoyu sauce and various things that they sold in the restaurant or even just served at the table now as packaged goods that are probably going to end up in stores, but for now they're just like selling out on their website, which is awesome. So people want that flavor. And Dave's not from Japan. He's actually Korean, but he has a love for all Asian foods, and there's a lot of mixture between those cultures in his different restaurants. So I've only been to Momofuku in New York, so I will say underrated because I have waited in 2-degree temperatures early to get a table. Mostly just because it was, that might have been more of a hype cycle, just like you get like the cronut and the rainbow bagels and all these things that like when the media covers it
I don't know what a Corona I know what a Corona beer is.
No, cronuts.
Oh, cronut.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Rainbow bagels is a thing to go Google later, but they're literally
Okay.
rainbow bagels. And
All right.
apparently a big deal. I
Food
don't
dye.
know that it necessarily tastes any different than a bagel, but
Okay.
as far as ramen goes, like, yeah, I think you can't beat going somewhere for it.
Yeah.
Locally.
And the colors are
Oh yeah.
like the egg, and then well, sometimes it's the fish cake, which looks like a radish, or it's a radish. Yeah. The greens, the seaweed. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I've been trying to like get better at it at home. So I like. There's a lot of different ways to kind of cheat at home, with the broth and things like that. But yeah, I think going out and finding something in your area is also good. In Reno, I would say, we don't have very many ramen options.
Right.
I think Ramen for Real is still open on 5th Street, and then Kaboy Izakaya also has a really good ramen.
Yeah, I've had it there, and that was delicious. And I know it's pho.
Very
it's
different.
Like pho.
Yeah.
But pho, very different, yes. And I've had that in a number of places in Reno. I know, especially like around downtown, just, I guess, if it's...
Yeah, it looks like EG...
It's a large Vietnamese influence, or it's just an easy, like, dish to make?
Yeah. We have a lot more Vietnamese restaurants than Japanese restaurants right now.
Yeah.
So we definitely... Ramen for Real, Kaboy, EG Noodle House looks like it has ramen.
Oh, I haven't done that one. Okay.
Haru, Japanese on Longley. I've not actually done it.
Now
we're just going to plug all the ramen places. So there are options. Go out there. Your homework is to go try them all and report back which ones we should try. You also got to try the different types.
I wonder where did Momofolk started in New York, right?
I think so.
Okay, there was a place that was I'm pretty sure it was in New York, but I think it was Ouija noodles or Womo noodles. Oh no,
I'm not sure.
It was it was pretty plain. I'm gonna have to look this up. I remember going to it in London, and big long family style tables, but it was a brand, and I remember it in my mind. I connect it with Muji because I learned about both of them at the same time, and Muji having Japanese. So, I'll have to find out what that is. But anyway, it was great.
This is unintentionally our Japanese episode.
This is. This has become unintentionally.
Yeah, so Momofuku actually has opened. They've opened up in Las Vegas. They're in the Cosmopolitan too. So you don't have to go all the way to New York, but if you need a reason to go to New York, they've got a whole family of restaurants now between Momofuku and Som and a whole bunch. So I'm a Dave Chang fan. I listen to his podcasts.
Yeah.
All that. So, and I would say if you're really interested in just food in general, his Netflix show is really good, especially now with, unfortunately, all of the things that we're seeing with just hatred towards Asian culture.
Yes, I was about to say,
it's very, very contentious. Is that, people seem to not understand, like, they'll talk about how much they love food from different places, but then they will make that culture or the people from those cultures invisible. And so learning about where it comes from and why it's made, and Ugly Delicious is the show on Netflix, and he really digs into the politics of food, and there's a lot of reasons why he doesn't like some of the more established ways of making things is that they are, they're established for a reason. And for him coming up, he didn't see a lot of chefs like him. And he had to kind of make a name for himself, and so we're seeing that more and more, and and it's really unfortunate that we'll see someone be talking about how much they love Chinese food, but then we're seeing what we're seeing. Now.
And it's a huge. I'm glad you said that, because I was sitting there thinking, I think it's important to mention this, especially, I mean, just in the last few weeks, there's been a lot more awareness, and this is right now we're at the last day of March. And I think it's also important to stress that, we see in the U.S. is, well, how do I put this? We do see people of different colors. We see people of different ethnicities. And one of the issues tends to be that Asian is seen is seen more as foreign than some other cultures
Right.
that make up the US. And that's very unfortunate. And there's a huge history in America and, of multiple Asian countries having had a huge impact on how this country was built and still is. And so, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm proud. Actually, we managed to tie it around to something that was actually quite important too.
Yeah,
social message.
There's a recent episode on Dave's show with Kelly Marie Tran where they talk about a lot of this stuff. I think it was recorded, unfortunately and fortunately, before a lot of the attacks that have been happening. But they talk a lot about her new movie. They talk about the backlash that she experienced from being in Star Wars because she...
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. It was a pretty big issue where, she didn't realize how the world was until she was in that movie. I would say is how she describes it.
Wow.
But even she was the main voice actor in the new movie from Disney, Raya, or Pixar, I guess it would be.
Oh, yeah.
So she's
Disney.
Yeah, Disney. So Disney's
Disney.
Raya. Very good movie, worth checking out. There were obviously criticisms about it being kind of a blend of all Asian cultures, but there were also a lot of really great, inclusions of, basically they discuss like what does it mean to be the first Asian voice actor in this all Asian cast of movie and so forth, versus being like just like the first actor, right? Why does it have to be first Asian actor, and so forth? So worth checking out if you want to get into that. But educate yourself. Definitely listen, talk to your friends if they need a talking to.
Be kind.
So
don't make assumptions.
Definitely.
All the good things.
So next week we'll probably talk about Muji for sure.
Oh, there we go. Definitely one of
we got Muji and IKEA.
One of the things I would highly recommend. Best piece of advice. Check out Muji.
Yeah. Muji,
organize
IKEA.
Everything. Yes.
No, we've got
I'm going to find that noodle place too.
Okay.
I'm going to find what that noodle / ramen / Ouija. No. Wagamama.
Okay. I actually have a Wagamama cookbook behind me somewhere.
Wagamama. I'm like, oh, I see the picture. I see the hands. I see the bowl. Wait. All right. Well, sorry for that little outburst. That was very exciting to have that come back.
You got it. It's the white logo with the red star.
Yes, the red. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So, we went to a lot of places. We did. What are we talking about next week?
We did. Well, like I said, Pearls of Wisdom, 30th episode. So we're going to be talking about, and what I'm looking for, and I'm hoping people will send us some, is the best and the worst advice you never asked for. So sometimes, as a woman, as a mother, when you're pregnant, you get a ton of advice that you just didn't ask for. As a parent, you get a ton of advice you didn't ask for. I'm sure as someone who's dating, when you're dating people, ton of advice you haven't asked for. When you start a new job, all those kinds of things. But some of the worst and the best advice that you hadn't asked for. So that's the idea. It'll probably expand in the next week as it tends to. But yeah. We want to hear everybody's opinions, everybody's pieces of advice.
Either comment on YouTube, Twitch comments disappear, but if you want to throw it out there, if you're on there now, or as always, there's at Rena Collective on Twitter, Facebook.
This time you can email us too.
Yeah, hello@renacollective.com.
Exactly. We're on Facebook. Send it to us via Facebook. So yeah, we're in the place Instagram. We're in the places you'd expect. And thanks for listening today.
Cool. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks,
everybody. All right. Bye.